Welcome to the No Manches ¿Qué pasó podcast, a podcast no one asked for about the unfiltered ups and downs of life from the perspective of two Latinas who got familias to manage,
real shit to deal with, and are just taking it one day at a time. Our chismes are your chismes,
porque why not? All right, welcome to another episode of the No Manches ¿Qué pasó podcast. And I'm still looking at the sign to make sure I get it right. Mm-hmm. But we got a guest today, Celina.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for coming. I know that I met you at a networking event. I don't know how you guys met, or was it through book club?
Book club.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Book club. Mm-hmm. And I just loved your energy. The minute I was just like, you know what? You want to come on our podcast? You bring it, girl. And plus, you're like a therapist. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, bonus points.
You're so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
thank you.
And we have your drink of choice.
Yes.
Paloma.
Yes. Yeah. It's a little strong, but I know Karina's.
But that's how you know it's good, though, when it's strong.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see how it is at the end of this episode. How we're at. Loosey goosey.
Right. Salud.
Yes.
Salud.
Cheers.
All right.
Some ASMR for our listeners.
Let me see.
There we go.
Yes.
I don't know how people do that ASMR all the time. I cannot. Remember? No. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, with their nails?
Yeah, I don't know how people do that. I cannot.
Maybe I'll try. I'm going to start a TikTok account.
We'll see.
We'll see.
See.
I'll do it.
Okay, pues.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay. My name is Celina. I'm a therapist, as Vanessa said.
Yes.
Sex and trauma therapist.
Okay.
So, I've been doing that for 6 years and in the mental health field for 10 years. So it's been a long time.
Yes. Wow. That's awesome. What made you get into therapy, or being a therapist?
Yeah. So funny story. I actually wanted to be a teacher at first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was doing daycare teaching and then interning at schools. And then I'll never forget, I was in internship and I was going to be with little kids, so early childhood. Mm-hmm. And I remember being there and I'm like, yo, this is a lot. I don't think I could do this for the rest of my life. Like with kids running around early, like 7, 8 a.m. I'm like, I don't know if I could do this. And then when I was at daycare, I remember parents, they would come to me a lot. They would ask me questions. They would talk to me. And I would listen. And then, I don't know, for some reason, I really like helping them and just, like, giving them advice on their kids. Just the talking to adults.
Right.
And then I'm like, I don't know if I want to be a teacher. Maybe I should look into, like, therapy. And so I did. And then, I changed my career path, and I became a therapist.
Wow. Awesome. And so where did you start? Like, because I feel like I've always thought of, like, therapists is always hard to get into, like, being a therapist and actually, like, building a clientele. Mm-hmm. So how did you, like, start? Were you working for somebody like are you like a practice? Are you currently working for yourself right now?
No, I'm working at a private practice. Okay. So how I started, honestly, that's a good question. So let me see. I'm trying to think. Going back to like even being a therapist, it's funny because in college I saw a therapist, but never in my mind did I thought like I wanted to be a therapist. Like that never came to me. And also I kind of want to bash CPS a little bit. They never talked about being a therapist as a career choice. Yeah. Like they always talk about social workers.
Right.
And I'm like, why did nobody talk about like counseling therapists? Because like, I think that's a good like career path to go to. But one of my first jobs was nonprofits. Funny enough, I first started at Pilsen Wellness Center. I think it's right here down Damon. So I was like, wow, going down memory lane, driving over here. So I started there, and then I used to work at SGA Youth and Services, and then in Inglewood. So I worked a lot in the brown and black communities.
Okay.
And then I want to say 3-4 years later, I jumped into private practice. But not gonna lie, I'm gonna disclose to y'all, I felt a little bit ashamed and guilt because back in grad school, I told myself I would never work for a private practice. And I'm going to explain why. Because in my mind, I thought you're working for white people and you're working with white clients only. That's what I thought.
Right.
And I was like, wow, I'm leaving my brown and black people behind. Like, how am I going to help them now? But that was, like, far from the truth. I actually started helping, like, black and brown clients, too, in private practice. So I had 2 years in Northbrook, and then I transferred back to Chicago to work from home.
All the way in Northbrook.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I will say there was more of a need for white people, but still there was some black and brown clients too.
Okay.
But now my caseload is majority black and brown clients now.
That's awesome though, that because you don't really see a lot of like, you know, the black and brown, you know, seeking help or seeking, you know, like therapists. I know for myself, you know, growing up, that was never really talked about. So that's something that I need to work on. Like, I need to find a therapist. I just can't, like, it's hard to find the perfect match, right? So I think it's overwhelming to me to kind of like see who I'm going to mesh with, who I'm going to click with, who's going to understand me. So I think every therapist, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they specialize in, you know, certain traumas, or like for me, it was, you know, divorced parents, a father leaving when, you know, 6 months old, or, you know, so I feel like I need somebody that's going to connect with me and understand like what I've been through. So, but yeah, I mean, the fact that you work with a bunch of like black and brown people, that's awesome. I mean, I feel like we've grown, you know, mental health has become so much bigger than what it was when I was a child.
Yeah. Can I ask you something though? Because you said 2 things I want to explore real quick.
Yes.
So the first one I heard you say, I guess I'm curious about, what does the perfect match mean to you? Because I believe there is no perfect match personally.
Yeah.
And that goes for everybody in like the dating world and therapists, right? I guess, what has stopped you from seeking a therapist, and what does that perfect match mean to you?
So I did see a therapist back then when I had my first child, and it was a white woman. You know, I think she was Jewish because I used to live in Lincolnwood. Okay. So it was very predominantly Jewish people there. So she was older, so she doesn't like... I felt like she helped a little, but not really. She didn't give me like tools. The only way like I found the tools is by reading. Like I read a lot of
like self-help books.
Yes, I did a lot of self-help books. So I feel like I am aware of, you know, when I hear myself like yelling or getting frustrated, I hear myself, and then I try to like check myself, like, okay, you're doing too much, or you're overreacting, or you need to just chill, go work out. Like for me, it's like working out is, I'm like relieving all of my frustration, my anger, or whatever. So that's how, but I also feel like I need those tools too, like just to kind of cope, or maybe subconsciously I'm doing something and I don't know why. Like, I want to know why I am the way I am sometimes, right?
So you need it sounds like you probably need a therapist to connect deeper into your background, like traumas, childhood, like get a little, to challenge you a bit too.
Yeah, exactly. But it's hard. Like, you know, it's like when you look up, it's like your insurance, especially when your different type of insurance that you have. Like, you know, my husband just got a new job, so it's a different insurance, and it's like, now you got to like figure out who is able to accept this insurance, and like, you know, like there's just so many different therapists, right? And I remember telling you, I was like, man, I wish you were my therapist. And you're like, sorry, I can't now.
Right. Conflict of interest now.
Right. You want to be my friend or do you want to be a therapist? I'm like, I'll have you as a friend.
Right. Deal.
Yes, exactly. But, I know Karina, she's very much, into like the therapist and marriage therapy, like even her kids have therapists. So I think it's just awesome. Like I think it's just great that people are being more open about it.
Yes. It definitely has changed for sure over the years.
Yeah, and I know that you said it's like, right away you have somebody that's coming to you like weekly and then bi-weekly and then it's like, what is it, monthly, and then it's kind of like, all right, you don't really need me anymore, right? Do you ever have like clients that have been with you for so long?
So right now I have clients longest probably 3-4 years. So
okay.
yeah. And these are clients that have followed me from the last private practice.
Okay.
I worked with, because the nonprofits, I'm sure they probably would have followed me, but unfortunately it was like a lot of Medicaid, Medicare, or just free, like through the programs I worked with. Which is unfortunate, but thankfully I feel like if it wasn't for that, they probably would be still following me.
Okay. And do you like only specify in a certain age, or you're just kind of like open?
So I'm pretty open, but since I'm virtual only, I try to stick to like teenagers and elderly, up to elderly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because it's very hard, to work with children like virtually. So they need that
That's
in
true.
person, like child play in person.
Right. And like, I know that you said you don't really have like children as clients, but how do you know if your child, like, does it only have to be because they went through something traumatic, or is like, do you think that every child should have some sort of like therapist?
Honestly, no, you don't have to go through anything traumatic to see a therapist.
Okay.
I think everyone should see a therapist as young as 3-4 years old, all the way till the day you die, honestly, because I think the main focus is about you, your thoughts, and your feelings. Like, just to have a safe space to do that. I think that's the main focus.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you said, the perfect match.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to know what is good for you until you actually put yourself out there. Kind of like dating,
Yeah.
And like, my daughter asked for a therapist because she saw that I had gotten a therapist for myself. My husband had a therapist, had started therapy. I had started therapy for my son, and it was like specialized for, like, I specifically sought a therapist for him because I saw some tendencies that I'm like, I want someone who can specifically address these things that I'm seeing. Okay. And then my daughter was just like, wait, what about me? I want a therapist. And so I looked for a general therapist for her. And through that, I think she's gone through, like, she's on her 4th therapist. And it's not necessarily because she didn't vibe with them. It's like they left the practice or they were transferred out, or it just didn't work out. And so the person she's with now is amazing. And I'm like praying that this person does not leave because it has been such a game changer for her. So even though the other therapists were good for her, like, this one has actually helped her like grow mentally.
Okay.
And like become more confident and stronger. And it's not necessarily like a specific trauma that has happened. It's just like teen years are hard.
Yeah.
Like, formative years are hard. And especially like going through COVID
That's
as
true.
a kid has been rough. And it's like things, she can talk about things, both my kids can talk about things that I didn't necessarily see as a parent, or like understand, and maybe they didn't understand until they were like in that environment and conversation. And so I think it's the same for adults. Like, we're all trying to figure out our lives because it wasn't a normal thing to talk about or even accepted. Like, my parents don't accept me going to therapy or being on medication, and so they won't talk about it. And so it's like our generation is trying to figure it out for the next generation. So it's okay to not have a perfect match or even know where to start. Right. It's just like that first step of starting.
I want to add to that, but also I want to, so there's two things on my mind. Like, it's okay to have preferences too. So like, I think that's something I had to learn, and I also teach my clients. Like, I always do an intake. So my intake is the initial like consultation. Like, we just talk and they get to see if we're a good fit, and we continue. Either they can continue with me or not. I've had clients say, hey, I don't think we're a good match, and others say, yes, I like this. Like, let's keep going. And I never take it personal, because I'm like, look, this is a job.
I'm not for everybody.
Right. I'm not for everybody, and this is also a job. Like, I don't take it personal. Like, and I'm not. Like, that's okay. But, like, I know for me personally, my own therapist over the years, it's changed. Like, I need a woman. I need someone older than me. And I need someone who's a person of color, because that's important to me. Other people, they don't have that preference. Some are very open. Some just want men therapists. Some want the same age. So I think that's something to think about too.
Yeah,
like, what do you want, right? Because like, I know I started off with white therapists, and then the more I learned about therapy and like having a therapist, I'm like, no, I need a person of color, because I don't need someone to say, oh, I get it, and I'm like, but you don't.
You really don't, right? Like,
I had one therapist who told me like, yeah, my son-in-law is Mexican. I'm like, that's not the same. That's not the same.
Right. Like, that's nice, but no.
Yeah, no, not at all. So there was something else I was going to add to that. You had said something, Celina, that stood out to me. What was it?
Me too. You said two things.
I know, there
perfect
was
match, and then the other one.
Oh, stigma. That's what it is. I think, like, when you said, like, your parents, right? Like, whew, I think in the brown and black community, that's another thing.
Yes.
And maybe we could talk about that too, because I think stereotypes and stigma it sucks, like, in our culture.
Yes.
Like, even with my own parents, like, when I first became a therapist, they're like, you want to be a therapist? Like, you want to help crazy people? And I'm like,
oh my God.
Really?
Honestly, that's what I thought when
I was like, really?
I was going through some shit in high school, and
that's what I said. No manches. Like, I know
no manches, right? But like,
Yeah.
my mom was like, maybe we need to take you to a psychiatrist, and right away, I thought psychiatrist. Why? Because I'm crazy. Like, so it's like, and it's not because that, my family would say psychiatrist or is crazy, but I feel like it was just society at the time, and it wasn't very like well known, and like mental health wasn't a thing back, in the 2000s, 90s, so it's like, at the time I was just like, I'm not going to see a psychiatrist. What the hell? I'm not fucking crazy, but things have changed, and I'm super like grateful that it's definitely evolved, and we're making it like, it's just, what's the word I'm looking for?
Normalize?
Yes, normalizing it.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Yeah, and kind of even psychoeducating like our parents, our culture, because again, I don't think they know, right? Like, I think sometimes we're the first ones to know, like, wait, talking to someone is actually healthy. Taking medication is actually good for us. Like, I know, self-disclosure, I've been on and off medication myself, because it's helped me mentally when I needed it. Because no matter if I did a workout or if I saw my therapist, sometimes that didn't work. Sometimes I needed to take meds to be like, get that little boost of dopamine that I probably needed.
And that's something that I'm trying to change, because I feel like I'm not big on medication. I'm just not, like, even taking ibuprofen or Tylenol. Like, if it's really, really bad, if I have a horrible headache, then I'll take it. But I try not to, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's valid too. I think that's valid too. Like, again, I think I'm more of a holistic perspective. Like, with a lot of my clients, medications is the last resort. Like, for me personally, I don't want to put you on medication, because I hear that a lot from my clients is like, I saw a therapist, like, medications. Like, I don't ever want to be like, that's the first resort.
End all, right.
I think holistic, like, let's try going for a walk. Let's get some sun. Let's socialize, right? Like, let's come to therapy. Let's learn coping skills. if I still see that doesn't work, now I'm gonna ask for medication. Like, let's try it, because I see I still see the symptoms. And
so what are those like symptoms? Like, if like, what are those signs that
I see personally?
Yeah, that you see that if working out, going for a walk, getting some vitamin D, sun.
Like, if it's still
not, like, what are those, like, is just like feeling down on yourself? Is it just like...
So that's a good question. It's hard to answer because every client is different.
Right.
But generically speaking, I would say, especially with disorders, like mood disorders, that's a hard one. Like, I wouldn't need them. Like, if everything they're doing, I still see they're having mood swings, they're getting irritable, they're getting angry. Like, let's try medications. Like, because even you're doing all the right steps, but I still see that you're still irritable, angry. Like, we need to try medications. Or schizophrenia. That's another hard one. Like, you could still do all the right things, but your mind is also, like, there's a battle in your mind going on. ADHD, right? Like, that's another one. It could be hard. Like, I see a lot of depression, anxiety. Let's try medications, right? Because sometimes it could help, in the moment. So... Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It does, and I get it. It's like when I went to school for education. I mean, every child is different. They learn differently. They process things differently. So yeah, it makes sense.
But yeah, I think I don't know if I've ever like really gone deep on the podcast about my medication journey, but I think I did talk about when I first got on medication. It was for depression, postpartum depression. And my midwife prescribed me my medication and was like, go see a therapist. And I was just like, okay, I got my meds now. Like, I'm feeling good. And then a year later, she's like, do you have a therapist? And I was like, no. She's like, well, I'm not going to prescribe you another year if you don't have a therapist. And I was like, dang, okay. So I went to the therapist and I was like, can I have some meds? Like, I'm on meds and I need my prescription. She's like, oh, I can't do that. And I was like, dang, well, what? Why am I here? But I was with her and like weaning off the meds because I was like, okay, well, if I'm here, I don't want to be on meds. Like, if you can help me get off them, that'd be great. And so that's what she did. But then when I had been off of them and started therapy again, and this was recent when we had like all the moves and like everything, and I knew specifically I wanted to go to therapy to help with like specific things. After a year with her, I was given, like, I had all the skills, like I had the coping skills, but it was just such a heavy time in my life that I was getting so anxious when I knew, like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm doing the things, but I can't help, like, my mind, like, I wasn't, like, able to process everything that was happening within my body and my head. And so I'm like, okay, I know I was on this medication before, and it kind of, like, quieted my brain down in order for me to put all of these skills in place. And so that's when I advocated for myself and was like, okay, I think I need a psychiatrist. And I found one, and even she was like, I specifically looked for a holistic one. And she was like, okay, let me check in on you in like 4 weeks, in 6 weeks, and see where you're at. And so then I had like a nervous breakdown, like panic attacks. And I was like, honestly, I can't do this. Like, please just like help me through the situation. I'm like, I just need a little something to help me focus enough to put all of those practices in place. And honestly, that was the best thing for myself. Like, sometimes you have to be your own advocate. When there's people in place, like a therapist and a psychiatrist that are on your side. Like, everyone's on your side. But especially if you're seeking those that are like holistic and like trying to give you the tools first before meds. there comes a point where you're just like, well, maybe.
Yeah, like Celina said, like, it's just...
Like, look, I can't, like, I'm sad, and I know I shouldn't be sad because this amazing thing happened, and I can't pull myself out of it. At least that's how it's been for me. But I specifically struggle with depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Carolina. And I think, too, you bring up a good point where, like, even for some of my clients, like, you see two sides of the spectrum. You see those who don't want medication, holistic, and then I've seen clients who only depend on medication where I challenge them, too, where I'm like, you need to talk about your feelings, too. You need to use other coping skills, right?
Right.
Because we want a healthy balance at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And that's why I try to lean my holistic clients to, like, hey, like, there's nothing wrong with medication. It's just in case you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's like conversations like these that bring more awareness to our community, because we've been so conditioned to believe certain things about therapy, about like being on medication. And I think, I mean, I've had to advocate for myself, even just setting that boundary with my parents and being like, look, I'm going to do this even if you don't believe that I need this.
Right.
Period. I love that. Very good.
Yeah. But it is hard because having the money and the insurance
that holds a lot of people back.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm in private practice, so it's all PPO, right? Where, I mean, I know some people that have HMO.
Yeah.
Or cash or Medicaid. Like, yeah. But even with that, right, there are some resources, too. But, ask, right? Like,
I mean,
I could help you, too, right?
Like pro bono, do they even have that? Like pro bono, like therapists?
So sliding scale. So sliding scale means, like, for example, like if you don't have any insurance and you want to pay out of pocket, you could pay out of pocket, or you could do a sliding scale, which I know I had to do it for some time when I didn't have insurance to see my own therapist. And I think I was paying $75 or $80. Like, that's
every like session.
Wow.
Yeah. But that was pretty doable compared to like 155, 175.
Right.
And I was seeing her probably bi-weekly. That's doable. Yeah. I looked at it for me as an investment because I'm like, I need to talk to someone.
Right. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yes. It's an investment. But so aside from you doing like, therapy with, like you said, from teen to elderly, I know that you said you also do another type of like therapy. So what other?
Yes, I do sex therapy as well.
Okay.
Yeah, what would you like to know about
so
it?
I'm like curious. I'm curious, like what is that? Because honestly, I've never really like heard about that. I just thought like, okay, marriage counseling. I thought it kind of intertwined. Like, okay, they're gonna help you like with whatever issues you got going on. If it's communication, if it's not being intimate with each other. Especially when you have like kids thrown into the mix. You put all of your energy on them, so you kind of like lose yourself, with your spouse or your partner. So just tell me, like, educate me.
You're so funny. So sex therapy really is what it says, right? It's a very broad like area of expertise with sex therapy. So I'm just going to explain, give you ideas wherever your mind may take you. So that could be sex issues, wanting to expand sex fetishes, whether that's exploring dungeons, role-playing, foreplay, your sexuality. I've worked with sex workers, sexual abuse, right? Like if there's dysfunctions in sex. So again, wherever your mind leads you to connecting with sex, that's what I work with.
Okay.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing that?
That's been 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But even for myself, though, honestly, I mean, in the 6 years of practice I've been a therapist, I still talk about sex because I'm not shy to sex because I used to teach sex education in high school.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not. So I used to, do a lot of sex education. So I feel like I've always been comfortable around sex. Like I've never been shy, where there are some therapists that are very shy with sex or very like they don't know how to talk about that. So that's why for me, I think I'm very confident when it comes to sex. Like, I love talking about it. Like, let's explore fetishes. Let's, like, what are your likes, dislikes, right? So that's very, like, I like that conversation.
So what made you get into that? Like, what
made me get into it?
Yeah, like, what made you, like, curious and you're like, you know what, I'm going to be a sex therapist too?
I mean, I think, like I said, I'm a very sexual being myself. And I think I'm very open with my own, like sexual desires. Yeah. I'm a sexual person, and I feel like a lot of people aren't. Like, they're very shy to that. Like, it's very taboo, and in our culture too, right? Like, that's always shamed upon, right? That's very like, true. Don't do that, right? Like, don't be a cochina or sucia, or you know, like, what are you wearing, right? Yeah. So, like, no, I've always been very rebellious. Like, don't tell me what to wear. Right. This is who I am. Yeah. Yes. And so, I don't know, I think I've carried that into my adulthood, like, and I want that for others too. And there's more than to that, right? Like, too, like, I think, like, for sex workers, for example, like, I love working with sex workers because I also teach them, like, you need boundaries even in your career, right? Like, because there's always that stigma too with sex workers, right? Like, that other society thinks of them. But something I like to teach them is safety, boundaries. You know, like, you could still do that even in your line of work. So, yeah. But, yeah, I think just, like, working in high school, teaching others about sex, I think I've still carried that into my adulthood.
That's cool. But also, like, how did you have to take, like, certain classes, or do you have to have, like, a certificate, or?
Yeah, so it's a certificate. Yeah, certified in sex therapy. Okay. The same for trauma too. Like, for, like, therapists, you could see if they're certified in trauma work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then there's EMDR, there's IFS. There's so many, like, specialties out there.
See, it's a little bit overwhelming. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, it's okay. I think maybe, you know, I'm sure it's overwhelming, right? But this is where you could talk to me as a friend, right? Like, say, Celina, what does that mean? And I'm like, IFS is internal family system. That's for your inner child. DBT is for diabolical behavioral therapy, right? EMDR is rapid eye movement for trauma work too. So, right, if you don't ask, how are you gonna learn, right? So
that's true. Yes. I do have a question. I don't know if you're gonna know the answer, but hey, I'm just gonna. So I have, like, you know, my 3 boys. You know, my middle child, he is very needy, like, super, like, always wanting, you know, the attention on him. Or if I give attention to another kid, he's all like, Mommy, why aren't you, you know, calling me baby? And I'm like, I do call you baby. But also, we had a very traumatic birth experience, you know, where we both almost died. So it's, and I don't know if that has anything to do with, like, you know, it's like subconsciously maybe something, or who knows, like, and I've always thought about, especially, you know, Karina's like, you know, I have my kids in therapy, and I'm just like, you know, I think it would be beneficial if he was in therapy too, because he's always, like, he's always talking about what other people think of him at such a young age.
How old is he?
He's only 7.
Yeah, he's very young.
Yeah, so I'm just like, why is he talking like that? Like, I've never, like, I always try to instill confidence in my kids and, you know, just make them, like, you know, not worry about what other people think, you know. Even though, like, I know that for myself, yeah, of course, I think it's, like, natural, like, oh, I can't wear this or whatever. It's like, I know that that's how I was as a child. So I guess, like, maybe sometimes it could be just the way, I don't know, just the way sometimes I mean, did you ever, like, as a child, did you ever care about what other people thought? I think it comes with age, like, where you just don't give a shit anymore.
I think it's different for everyone, right? Like, I mean, number one, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, thank you for sharing. I think
that's that therapist in her.
No, yeah,
thank
but
you
I
for
mean,
sharing.
no, you know, but
I love that. I love it. I love it.
Because I mean, it's deep, right? Like, I wanna reassure you guys, right? When you share something deep, yes, as my therapist, but as a person too, right? I have a lot of empathy for that. But I mean, I think because he went through that trauma. I mean, he may have an anxious attachment. Like I'm hearing he's very anxious, so he may like that traumatic, experience was probably. It probably provoked a lot of anxiety for him, right? Even at 7 years old, to have a lot of reassurance from you,
for sure. Like, and he is. I always thought like he was, had anxiety issues. He doesn't do it anymore, but he was always like biting his fingers. It's such a young age, like 2, 3, until I was like, okay. Like you can't be doing this, like you can't be, because there would be to the point where he would like bleed or biting his lips or his like inside of his cheek, and then it would bleed or just have like blisters. So we finally got out of that phase, but I still like feel like I think therapy would be beneficial, but I just was always curious if like birthing experience or something that happened like traumatic in my pregnancy or
my second also is very anxious like that, also biting. And I specifically sought an OCD therapist for him, one that happens or focuses on compulsive disorders.
Okay.
Because he would also like ruminate on a specific thought,
like too much,
and can't like move past it. Also a nail biter, but also would like I had to give him like fidget toys.
Okay, yeah.
Because also he would do stuff with his mouth, and so I didn't want him to bleed, and so I'd get him like a rubber shark tooth necklace or like necklace that he could be like,
he can just bite on it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, our birth wasn't necessarily traumatic, but I did force him out. Like,
what do you mean?
I was induced.
Oh, well, yeah, that's what happened with Leo.
Yeah.
He was like, I was induced, and then my placenta ruptured. So it was like...
Yeah. I mean, it has a lot of factors to that, right? Like, I think, like, don't overthink it, right? I mean,
I'm always that's one thing that I...
Right, but validate, like, and I mean that, like, genuinely, right? Like, I guess what I mean is, yes, that's a traumatic experience, right? But I think, and this is what I tell all my clients, we're all anxious, sad, angry, happy beings.
Yeah.
Let's normalize that, guys. Right?
Okay,
like,
I'm glad that you said that,
let's
because
normalize that. Kids are gonna be like, I know I was anxious as a kid. Sometimes I think like my dad would leave, and I'm like, what if he never comes back? That's an intrusive thought. Or I would think like, oh my gosh, what if at 3rd grade I thought like, what if I fail and I'm homeless?
intrusive thoughts.
Right?
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I have that too.
I used to think like, oh my God, what if I never like I don't become nobody, right? Like and that was a kid.
Yeah.
So I think let's just normalize that for a second. Everyone's gonna have big feelings, and what I tell my clients is 2 things can happen with those big feelings. We don't learn how to make it stop, and it becomes crippling, and that's where it becomes a problem because we don't learn how to manage our emotions in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Or, we learn and we manage them. I'm a therapist. I also see my own therapist. Guess what, guys? I also have intrusive thoughts.
Yes.
I get sad. I get angry. I think these are just very normal feelings. And that's why I'm saying don't overthink it. But it tells me a lot that you're probably an anxious person too.
I am, totally.
So it could be genetic too, right? Like maybe genetics too, right? Where maybe that's why he's also anxious.
I didn't think about that, like genetic wise.
Yeah,
like
that plays a part. Genetics.
Yeah. I'm always biting my nails. Yeah. Always. And like going like this. So it's like Listen.
You're wondering where he got it from.
I know, but I didn't. But honestly, I didn't think it was genetics. Honestly, I just thought it was just something that, like, for me, I in my head, I'm just like, oh, I'm like this because of what I experienced as a child. Like,
I mean, all of that has a lot of factors. I mean, trauma could play a part, right? Or genetics, environment, like a lot of things play a part.
So that's why I didn't like put 2 and 2 together. I was just like, well, shit happened to me when I was a kid, so that's why it made me anxious and made me like.
So it connected your mind, right?
So then I was like, well, maybe he's anxious because of what happened in the birthing experience or something happened. It's like it was very traumatic. So that's why that was my, just understanding it from my perspective.
Or maybe for yourself, right? Maybe you could also be projecting some of that. Like, what if it's you that causes you a lot of anxiety?
Exactly. That's why I'm like, oh shit, did I do something? Right. Yeah. So, but I love that you said, let's just normalize. These are just normal feelings. Everybody's anxious. Everybody goes through shit. Right. It's just the way you cope with it. Right. You manage it.
Yeah.
Like with your tools. And yeah, that is my goal this year is to find a therapist.
Yeah.
That is
keep us posted.
I mean,
yes,
I think you said that last season.
I know. Quiet.
No.
We gotta keep her accountable.
I know.
That's a perfect way to end the episode. You get a therapist. Your kids get a therapist. Your husband gets a therapist.
Yeah, no, seriously.
We all get a therapist.
We all get a therapist.
Everyone needs a therapist. In my opinion, that's what I live by.
Yeah.
Everyone should see a therapist. At least once in their life. To see how it is.
It's super beneficial. Do you have any tips on how people can get started in looking for a therapist?
Yes.
Like, what's a good resource if you're just starting this journey?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would see Psychology Today. That's the easiest way to find a therapist.
Psychology Today.
Yeah, you look in the search form, you put Chicago, and then my favorite thing to do after that is filter. So do you want to see a Latinx therapist, a black therapist, a white therapist? How do you want them to be? Do you want to go in person? Do you want to go virtual? What insurances do they accept, right?
Okay.
What's their expertise, too, right? Like, you could look at that, too. Like, look at their bio, see what stands out to you. Some of them have videos now, too, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's my go-to, Psychology Today.
Psychology Today. All right, I'm going to take you up on that.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yes. I'm trying to get you right.
Thanks, boo.
Accountability.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on our show.
Yeah.
You definitely should be, a reoccurrent guest.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, well, thank you guys, too. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
appreciate
Cheers.
it. Yes,
Cheers. All right.
Salud.
Good episode.
All right. We out.
Good. It was deep. I loved it. I'm all about deep conversations.
Yes, for sure.
Now what? She's going to send us an invoice because you asked a lot of questions.